you can have the greatest ideas, but if you don't get it across in the right way, if you don't get it across in a persuasive way, or you don't have the right amount of influence, people will ignore it.
You know what? My favorite line in sales is, something that honestly I think about all the time, and most people, it makes them uncomfortable, but you don't get what you don't ask for.
I think this one actually might be one of the biggest principles of persuasion in the modern era, especially when you're online.
Yes. I don't want to say why did you fall for it, but like what made you do it?
If you recommend it, I trust it. And I was doubtful that he would look at me 2 times in a row and say, yes, I recommend it.
Yeah.
And it not actually to be a good product.
I actually have one, funny enough, of a time where you were very persuasive to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's actually a really great story.
Okay, here we go. Why do you think it's worthwhile to understand influence and persuasion? And what might anybody listening to this have to gain by trying to learn to become more influential and persuasive?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think influence and persuasion is, a big factor in all of our lives, sometimes consciously and sometimes unconsciously, right? So sometimes you might not even realize that you're being influential, or you might not even understand that, you're being influenced, right? First and foremost, when I hear the word influence, the first thing I think about is like influencers on social media, right? It's a term we hear often, and, I don't really understand how influencers are influencing me, but I think they do unconsciously, right? Whether we're just like doom scrolling and just like swiping on the reels. But I do think that, they are influencing us, sometimes without us knowing. So, whether it be, fitness, health and wellness, dietary, means and whatnot. But yeah, I think we're being influenced on a daily basis, whether it be on social media, in our day-to-day lives, with our family, with our friends, with our peers, maybe with colleagues, or even our superiors. So yeah, I think it's super important to understand, and also to, try and like check yourself, if I may, to realize maybe when you're being influenced. Yeah. Just to have a good understanding of, when you're being influenced, maybe you're not kind of, in the right mindset to be influenced. So I think it's really important to understand that. In terms of persuasion, I think they definitely have some similarities. Sometimes when you're being influenced, you're being persuaded. But I think when most people think about persuasion, they're often thinking about, like being sales or being sold on something. Yeah. But yeah, persuasion is a pretty unique topic, I think. But I don't know. What do you think about persuasion? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Yeah, well, like you said, there's so many influencers online. There's so many people that are trying to persuade and influence you. Very often it's very subtle. You may not even realize they're influencing you, but they are. And I think by understanding more about influence and persuasion, there'll be 2 main things that you'll gain. One being that you'll have a better idea of when other people are trying to influence you and persuade you. Mm-hmm. And if you understand what's going on, you may be able to kind of pull back and not get influenced as much if you don't want to.
If you don't want to.
If you don't want to. But if you do, then at least you recognize what's happening. And then a second aspect is that everybody has messages that they want to get across to the world, to other people, whether it's at work, in relationships, on social media. And you can have the greatest ideas, but if you don't get it across in the right way, if you don't get it across in a persuasive way, or you don't have the right amount of influence, people will ignore it and they're not going to accept it. Mm-hmm. And so I think those are some big reasons why it's worthwhile to understand influence and persuasion, kind of on an offense and a defense side. If you want to persuade, you need to know it. If you don't want to be persuaded in a manipulative way, you need to know it. Yeah. And so how would you split these 2 words up, like influence versus persuasion? What do you think the main difference is between those 2?
Yeah, so the first thing I think about is like how it is in business and how it was, working in different environments. So I think the one thing that I've learned is influence is more of like a long-term game, right? You're trying to influence whether it's a client or a colleague that you're going to be working with for a long time. Where persuasion, I think, and, I've experienced a little bit on both offense and defense, right? Where, for example, I was in the car business for a while, and I was selling cars, and, a big aspect of that job was essentially persuading people into buying a car, right? And I don't want that to come off in a bad way, thinking like I was getting people to buy cars just because they were there and I was trying to hustle them.
Yeah.
But, they brought themselves into the dealership. They, have some sort of intention to buy a car.
Yeah.
And that's how I was making a living. So I needed to essentially persuade them into, realizing that, you're in a good place. I'm a trustworthy guy. Happy to, sell you whatever you're looking for. I'm not going to push you or sell you on anything you don't want to. But if they tell me what they're looking for and I find that for them, they might need a little bit of a push to, outline the pros and cons and, essentially why they should transact with me.
Right.
But there was also an aspect of influence, right? So I'll actually dive in really quickly to a story. It was actually one of my first weeks in the car business. And there was this gentleman walking the lot and he was looking, I worked at a Ford store, so he was looking at trucks, right? Yeah. And there was this other experienced salesman who I saw walked over the lot to, I guess, just approach this guy and see if he was interested in, buying a car. And he wasn't successful. I think the guy just kind of shook him off and said, like, I'm not buying today or whatever. I'm just having a look.
Yeah.
And then maybe 20 minutes later, I realized he was still walking around. He was still looking at trucks. So I was like, I'm going to go give it a shot. I'm going to go introduce myself to this guy. And I remember going over and I introduced myself, told him my name. And I just kind of said like, hey, welcome. Just, just wanted to check in. Is there anything I can help you with? No, I'm just having a look. And I remember exactly what I said, actually. I was like, oh, great. Yeah, Ford's a great truck. How long you been looking for one? And he's like, I've actually been looking for a couple months. And, I think this is what I'm looking for and this and that. And sure enough, I just started asking him some really basic questions. And again, this was like the first week on the job.
Yeah.
And I was just asking him some basic questions, which I realize now were actually like good questions to like quickly build some rapport. So apparently he actually told me this, the guy who, He did end up buying a car for me, actually.
Right on.
But he actually exposed the first guy who came up to him, and he's like, you're a way better salesman. He's like, you asked all the right questions. He's like, the other guy just came over and he told me that like the truck has leather seats and a sunroof and a blind spot system, and I don't know, that just like didn't resonate with me. It didn't make any sense.
Just listing the facts.
Just listing facts, right? Yeah. And I went over there and I was just having a casual conversation, like, just doing what I could, getting my toes wet in the industry, and just so sure enough, he ended up buying a truck for me. And so anyway, so back to influence is, I think that you're trying to make an impression on someone, right? And I think that especially in the car business, there is, quite a big stigma that like car salesmen can be greasy or sleazy, like just trying to make a buck. And I did, if I don't mind me saying, I did pretty well in the car business. I sold pretty well. Yeah. And it was never because I was trying to like persuade people or like convince them that, we had the best features or the cars were the best. It was honestly just being a personable guy, right. Making sure that they knew that, they were in a good spot and I'm happy to help them. They don't need to buy today. And, if I can help them with anything, that'd be great. And so I think,
do you think a lot of the customers, like they already know they want to buy a car? That's why they're on the lot, right?
Exactly.
And so if you're essentially just like a likable salesperson and you are interested in what they want and why they are here on the lot and what are the features that they like.
Yeah.
You think that's like some of the main components, especially for sales, car sales specifically?
Just like being personable?
Yeah, just be personable, be likable, and try your best to make the other person feel comfortable. Because I think at car sales, it can be somewhat intense, especially with the stereotype of like the pressure, high pressure 100%. Salesman. You show up, you're like, they're going to come get me. And like, especially if you don't know too much about cars, you're not a big enthusiast.
Yeah.
You don't know, like they might say terms and stuff you don't even understand. And you're like, okay, I got to be on the defensive.
Yeah, exactly.
But if the guy opens up and he's friendly and he starts to make you feel more comfortable, it's a big factor, eh?
Yeah, for sure. I think being personable, honestly, in any business is helpful, right? If you just kind of, if you dive right into business and you just start listing the facts and all the pros, I don't think you're really going to get anywhere in the long term.
Yeah.
And, you know, they often say in the car business, it's not really a long-term business, right? You're there to make a relationship quick, you know, sell them a car and out the door they go, right? And I didn't really see it like that. And I can't remember who told me this. It might have been a sales manager or something early on. But, you know, he gave me this line and he's like, you don't just want to sell them one car. He's like, tell them that you want to sell them every car for the rest of their life. You want to sell their daughter's car, their mom's car, their wife's car. You want to sell their whole family a car for the rest of their lives. And I remember saying that to some customers or some clients, and they really liked that. They were like, I'm not going to, you know, push you to buy one today because I want you to come back when you're done with this car. I want you to refer your wife to come here and buy a car. And there was actually a couple scenarios like that when, you know, one guy had a good experience and, you know, a few months later he was coming back with his wife to say, you know, this is the guy to deal with. Find us a car, right? So that was really great. But anyways, I think the main topic we're trying to touch on here is, you know, influence versus persuasion. So definitely in the car business, there was a big aspect of persuasion. At some point, you got to persuade them that, you know, they're making the right decision. You know, but the other thing is you're trying to make a living, right? So you got to remind yourself that they are there, they are willing to buy a car. That, you know, they came here for a reason. So at some point, you know, you got to kind of sell them a little bit, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to sell them the wrong thing, right? So again, like I was saying before, if you've narrowed it down, they told you what they're looking for, they told you their budget, they told you like their expected payments or whatever, then you can accommodate those things and sell them something honestly and know that you're doing the right thing. Where if someone comes in and he's looking for a truck and maybe he says he doesn't make a lot of money or whatever, well, you're not going to try and sell him a $60,000, $70,000 truck, right? And so I'd be upfront with those people and say like, listen, you know, I don't think it's the right time. I don't think it's a good decision for you to do something like this. You know, but let me show you some other options maybe. And, you know, and maybe in a couple of years you can get into the, you know, exact truck you're looking for. So that being said, there is persuasion in the car business for sure. But I think using influence is also a good way to, you know, do well in the business for those, you know, qualified clients that, you know, are actually willing to buy.
What would be an example of using influence? Like, is it fair to say that persuasion, if you're trying to use persuasion, it's more of a short-term outcome versus influence is more long-term? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, influence, you have to influence someone long-term, of course, right? So if you're not going to influence someone in a good way, then you're not going to have, you know, any long-term relationship with them. And, you know, in the car business, like I said, I was, you know, trying to, you know, build my business in a way where I had a lot of referrals and repeat business. That wasn't necessarily the nature of the business. But, you know, as I switched careers, you know, real estate, for example, is a much more influential business, right? So it's much more long-term. The decisions are not made quickly. They're made, you know, much longer time stretch. So you need to be influential. You need to, you know, have expertise. You need to be an expert in your field. You know, and if you can promote the idea and, you know, influence people into making them think that, or not making them think, but making them know that, you know, you're an expert, you're respected. You know, I think it's a good thing overall for sure.
Yeah. I feel like that advice that your sales manager gave you about trying to focus on the long term is great, because I could picture myself being a customer, and if I get the sense that this person isn't just trying to make a quick sale and they couldn't care less what happens when I leave the lot, as long as they made a good profit, you kind of can get that vibe off of somebody, and you realize, okay, they're not trying to screw me over. If they want to make long-term sales, maybe with my family or me again in a few years, they know they can't screw me over, because then I'm not going to want to come back.
Exactly.
And so is that might be one of the main differences you see in real estate versus car sales. Like, what are some other differences you see? And can you give people a bit of a background of how long you did car sales and how long you're now in real estate, and what the differences are and some of the big success points are? Like, I saw a couple weeks ago, or actually it was a couple days ago, you got a big New Year's sale.
New Year's sale, New Year's Day. Not a bad way to start off 2026.
Get some points on the board early.
Yeah, congratulations to my buyers. Actually, I won't name any names, but great day for my buyers on New Year's Day. So that was great. You know what? I spent about 3 years in the car business. I was about 1 year in retail sales, just like selling cars out of a dealership. And then I moved over to a big corporation, that was doing wholesale. So I was essentially like a broker for the dealer. So I was no longer selling to customers just buying one car off the street for themselves. I was selling to businesses, to dealerships, right? And I think that's kind of where there was a big change in, selling cars retail. I wasn't a very persuasive guy. Again, I was still trying to be influential. I was trying to build rapport, just be an overall nice guy. I think that was the best way to do it. But when I moved into wholesale, I realized how important influence was, again, in that you need to build these relationships because, again, they're not going to return to you if you're not a respectful guy, an honest guy, that does, good, honest work, right? Mm-hmm. So when I went into the wholesale industry of cars, my clients were long-term clients, right? And I had to remind myself that I'm not selling them one car, right? Like these clients were buying dozens of cars a month, right? Yeah. I think my busiest month I sold like 600 cars or something like that, right? So I had a bunch of different businesses that had multiple different dealer locations, and they needed to buy a fleet of cars for all their different locations, right? So not only were the sales good and important, but they also were reoccurring, right? Like they would sell those cars retail and they would need to restock. So they were buying lots of cars off me. So it wasn't just a one-time thing. I needed to make sure that, I was their guy, very knowledgeable, not overly persuasive, and just, it was great. So there was two aspects. Retail, it was persuasive. When I was in wholesale car business, a little bit more influential, reoccurring clients. And then when I got into real estate, it's been over 2 years actually now. And it's a whole different ballgame, right? These are much bigger transactions, a lot more weight on the line for clients that are, getting into home ownership or buying a second house or a third house, or an investment property for that matter. The stakes are a lot higher, and you need to make sure that you carry yourself in a very, very professional way.
Right. And these are the biggest purchases that people are going to make.
These are huge purchases, right? So you need to make sure that they're taken care of, that they know they're being taken care of. And in order to, get clients, get your name out there, you kind of got to be influential, right? If you're not, I see new agents getting into the business, and it's a tough game out there, man. Like it's not every day you run into someone who wants to buy a house, right? So you need to build your influence. You need to get your name out there, and you need to spread the word that you're a knowledgeable guy, reputable, which is obviously difficult in the beginning stages because you might have only one deal under your belt and whatnot. But referral business is huge in real estate, and I think if you're not influential, then people aren't going to spread the word, and you won't have very many referrals, right? So car sales, definitely leans more on the side of persuasion, and real estate is way more influential in terms of, just spreading the word and making sure people know that, they're in good hands when it comes time to buy a house.
So it sounds like you had like a pretty natural ability with sales, like just the story about first week on the lot, already impressing one of the customers, even over one of your coworkers.
Yeah.
Are there certain like training toolkits, maybe aside from that one advice that your sales manager gave, or potentially even some training advice that you've actually found to not be very helpful? Could you share those, like maybe some big do's and don'ts, maybe for a beginner salesperson listening, anybody who wants to kind of level up their persuasion game?
Yeah, you know what? I've been on like some really big world-renowned like sales seminars before, and they teach them really great things and techniques and how to handle objections and how to work with different clients and people with different personality traits. To be honest, I feel like I've I don't know. I'm not trying to speak too highly of myself, but I feel like I just have this natural ability to like read someone and have some emotional intelligence and how they're feeling kind of beyond their face. If someone's stressed, if they're uncomfortable, if they're not, feeling at ease about something. But it comes naturally. So I don't really have like a book of techniques that I, dial into for every transaction. But one example that I'll give you really quickly is, let's say I have some clients and we're seeing some homes, and, they're not a first-time home buyer, so they know how real estate works, and we're seeing some homes. Maybe it's their second home, or they're downsizing or upsizing, whatever. Something that I hear about often is an agent, or hear about often, or even see. There's people watching like real estate reality TV shows, and these real estate agents are walking their clients through the house, and they're just explaining how beautiful the house is, and look at the hardwood floor, and look at the countertops and the architecture and the custom work. Like, they're making it out to seem like they're selling a car, but it's a home, right? It's buying a house is more logical than emotional, right? A car can be pretty emotional time where you're fired up about a new car, and you pull trigger on something really quickly. Where a home, you're making logical sense out of something. You've prepared, you've worked hard. It's the biggest transaction. So when I show a house, I do it a little bit differently. I'll open the door for my clients, and I'll just say, have a look around the house. I'm not going to follow you around. You can navigate your way through a home, no problem. Have a look and let me know what you think. If you have any questions, I'll be down here, and maybe keep note if anything comes to mind, and afterwards I'll show you a couple things. They love that, and I think when I look into it, clients won't say something they don't like in front of you, right? So if you're showing them around a house and you tell them how nice the ensuite is, or the primary bedroom, like, it might be nice to me, but they might be like, this is the ugliest bedroom I've ever seen. But they're not going to tell you that, right? Where let them walk through the house themselves. They'll have discussions amongst themselves about whether they like it or not. And I think they really like that. Now, that's kind of for clients who have bought a house before. First-time home buyer is a little bit different. Like, yes, they know how to navigate their way around a house, but it's important to show them some things. Maybe keep an eye on this. In the basement, for example, the mechanical room, like, what is this furnace? What is this AC? What is this air purifier? Show them around, show them some things to look out for. But even for first-time home buyers, maybe the first couple houses, but then they get the gist of it. They know what to look out for. Go tour the house, have a look around. If you have any questions, let me know. And people really like that, to be honest. They don't like being toured around a house, or having their hand held, right? So
100%. And I feel like there might be a small risk there if you're going around the house pointing out your opinion of every single thing, because if you're like, okay, next room, look at the beautiful floor. And in their head, they're like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I actually hate this floor.
You and I are not on the same wavelengths, and that could throw them off. Yeah, I feel like I would definitely much rather that. Just kind of leave the you be to make your own opinions and assessments, rather than having, it's almost like a PowerPoint presentation where you're just reading off the things. You're like, okay, so this wall is like this, and this floor is like this.
Exactly.
Are there any kind of major learning moments where there was like something didn't go the way you wanted when you were selling? Like, do you have any examples of that where there was a big takeaway?
I mean, nothing's really coming to mind right off the bat.
Yeah. Do you think in like what about for like the car sales, like high pressure sales, and like maybe something similar to this? Like, I have an example where I was trying to get sold something. I went to Mr. Lube, and I left there like actually kind of upset. I didn't enjoy the experience at all.
Just got rinsed or what?
They tried to rinse me, and I ended up calling them out, and then they did me a favor and like took it off my bill. But basically, I went in, just wanted to get an oil change. Time had come. I needed to get an oil change. And the guy comes by. He's like, okay, what do you want to get? Oil change? Cool. I got 2 other products you might be interested in. One was just I don't even know what it was exactly. It was some sort of oil cleaning product for $90.
Okay.
And then
flush the engine or something.
And that was the next one. He's like, what about the engine flush? $30. And I was like, okay. And I'm not a car enthusiast. I don't really know too much about cars. So I'm kind of going in there blind. I'm trusting the authority that is the mechanic in front of me. And so he's saying, yeah, I really recommend both these things. And I'm like, okay, let me take a photo of the $90 one. I'll get back to you. Maybe I'll drive back in another day.
Yeah.
And then he's like, he moves on to the engine flush. And I'm like, well, do you really recommend this? I mean, I don't really know much about it. And he's like, yeah, we recommend, everyone gets it every year. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I've gotten it before. Can you check my records at Mr. Lube and let me know if I have?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, records show you've never had it. And I've had my car for 6 years.
Okay.
So he's like, yeah, we recommend it every year. You've never had it. And I'm like, oh, wow. And I'm like, you really recommend it? He's looking me in the eyes like 100%. And I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I'll go for it. And he's like, yeah, okay. That makes me feel a lot better because, You won't go for the $90 one, but at least you'll get something. It'll be better for your car.
Okay.
And then shortly after that, I just didn't feel quite right about it. And I know Mr. Lube's kind of model, the way they sell things. They try to upsell you on everything.
Yeah.
So I text one of my friends who actually works at a Mr. Lube in a different location.
Didn't want to go see him from the beginning? Or?
Yeah, I don't know. I just went to the one near my house.
Okay,
but
fair enough.
But I messaged him like, so engine flush, you recommend it or not? He quickly replies, thankfully, being like, no, it's a scam. Don't get it.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, oh, fuck. And then I quickly, I look up on ChatGPT and I ask about the engine flush. And it says, actually, there's essentially no benefits. There's a small chance that it can be harmful, like very, very small. But
Okay.
I'm like, I'm just paying $30 for something that my buddy says it's a scam. He works here.
Yeah.
AI tells me it's also a scam.
Yeah,
and
that's
there's
crazy.
a chance that it's going to wear out some of the gaskets. Very minor chance. But I couldn't hold it in. And I was like, hey, did you guys already do it? Because if you haven't already, I don't want to get it anymore.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, I'm not sure. Let me check. I'll see downstairs. And he's like, yeah, we did it. And I'm like, oh, shit. Because I just looked it up. And apparently there's really no benefit to getting it. I just wanted to tell him what I knew at this
Put him
point.
on the spot, yeah.
And I was like, yeah, this is what I know now. And he's like, okay. And you could tell I was kind of frustrated. He's like, hey, we'll waive the fee for now. And I was like, okay, cool. Appreciate that. But yeah, that was a moment where I'm like, damn, he was really looked me in the eye, said he really recommends it. Turns out it's a complete scam.
Yeah.
Not going to be beneficial for my car. And I was like, at least sell something that does a little bit of a benefit,
Yeah,
right?
at least
Don't sell me
something, right?
something that is actually potentially harmful.
Yeah.
And so now I know, I basically, whatever they throw at me, I either research it and I'll say no, I'll come back another day. But
So something just came to mind. So do you think in that scenario, you were more influenced by this guy because he was a mechanic? He, seemed to know what he was talking about. He's changing your oil. He's probably wearing his mechanic outfit.
Yeah.
So do you think you were influenced because he seemed like a professional in his business, or was it didn't sound like he was very persuasive? It sounded like he kind of came from, an influencing point of view. But yeah, what do you think? Like, I don't want to say why did you fall for it, but like what made you do it?
well, I think it was, he was an authority on the subject of what should I do with my car.
Fair.
And I need to rely on people like that for cars, or like let's say for like medical advice. I might go to a doctor for. In this case, I'm looking at him and I asked him a couple times, you really recommend it, just to be 100% sure? If you recommend it, I trust it. And I was doubtful that he would kind of stand there, look at me 2 times in a row and say, yes, I recommend it.
Yeah.
And it not actually to be a good product. So I was like, okay, well, I'll trust that and I'll run with it. And so I think it was the authority that he had on the subject.
Yeah.
And that is actually one thing that I want to get into later, is these specific principles of influence and persuasion. Authority being one of them, is we tend to be persuaded or influenced by people who have an authority on a subject.
100%.
And yeah, we can start jumping into those, because basically what I like to do is I read this book. It's kind of like the Bible of influence and persuasion. This guy, Robert Cialdini, he wrote the book called Influence.
Good guy.
Decent guy.
Yeah.
And it goes through 6 different principles. And I like to hear, like, if you've seen these principles on the job when you're doing car sales or real estate, and also how we might be able to capitalize on each one of these principles so that you and I, or anybody listening, could use these, put them into their sales toolkit, and be better off on the offense and the defense.
Yeah.
So yeah, the first one is authority. And before we go too far on that one, I think all of these principles, what they essentially are, is they're kind of, it's the way our human nature is set up. It's the way our psychology is set up. Is there's 2 main systems of thinking. One is really fast and one is more slow, deliberate, calculated.
100%.
And the brain is essentially somewhat lazy. It likes to be in the more intuitive, fast, automatic mode. Mm-hmm. And it'll switch to the more deliberate, calculated mode only if it needs to, but it prefers to stay in the easier mode. And so I think when you recognize someone has authority on a specific subject, it puts you in that mode of ease. You say, okay, great. I don't need to think too hard about what these products are. I can just trust you. You're the one who knows.
Yeah.
And I stayed in that mode. until after I agreed to go with it.
Right.
And then at that point, I'm like, you know what? Let me look into this. What is an engine flush? Like, what is actually going on? Okay, it does something with my gasket. It could potentially wear out the gaskets. And I start thinking a bit more slowly and deliberately.
Yeah.
But at that point, I had already been persuaded due to the slow system one of thinking.
Yeah.
The fast system one that just kind of got me there.
Yeah.
Have you seen authority play a role in when you're selling cars or selling houses, and what specific would be some examples?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is oftentimes in the car business, people would come to a dealership and they know more about the car than I do. You know, they've done their research, they went online, they know everything about the car. But there's other times where, like, you know, an older lady maybe come in and she has no idea what she's looking for. She just wants a new car, right? So I think they oftentimes are looking for some authority and looking for some, you know, opinions from a professional on, you know, what kind of car she should buy. So I saw a little bit about that in the car business, but for the most part, people knew what they were looking for. And, you know, that's kind of was why it was a little bit easier to, you know, essentially sell a car than a house. Is people knew exactly what they were looking for. They came in to buy it. They knew the color, they knew the model, you know, and that was pretty much it. Right. From a real estate standpoint, authority, I mean, yeah, I think it's huge. I think your clients need to know that, you know, you're an authoritative figure in, you know, purchasing a house. Right. And, you know, having authority is really important because your clients want to feel secure and, you know, have, you know, be well informed about the whole process. But something's just coming to mind that I think is really important that, you know, most people aren't in real estate, but, you know, they eventually will transact in real estate. But you definitely want to have an agent that's representing you that has authority, right? And it's not because necessarily they know everything about a certain house, but you want them to have authority when it comes time to discuss with the other agent. So I'll break it down really quickly. Let's say you're a buyer and you're in the buyer market, you're looking at houses, and, you know, a house comes for sale, you're really interested in it, and I'm representing you, and there's a listing agent, right? There's an agent that's listing the house for sale, and there's an agent that's representing the buyer. Yeah. You as a buyer want an agent that has a lot of authority, because you want your agent to portray the idea to the listing agent that you have a qualified buyer who's, you know, serious about the home, who's ready to transact on it. You know, and that's more important sometimes than others. For example, if it's, you know, a house that's really nice and really well priced and there's lots of people interested in it, you want an agent yourself. Sorry, I just need to keep reminding that when I say your agent. Yeah. You want to make sure that your agent portrays the best image of yourself to the listing agent. Let's say there's multiple offers on a house at one time. Well, you want to make sure that your agent paints a perfect picture to the listing agent that you're a serious buyer, that your finances are in order, you know, you're qualified to buy this house, and, you know, the buyer's agent needs to essentially have authority to convince the listing agent that, you know, you have a qualified buyer on the line here. He's serious. Let's get down to business, right? Right.
Yeah, like if your agent, I guess, has minimal authority, he's going to show up, start talking to the sales agent. They may not respect him as much, and they'll kind of gloss over him a bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I don't think many people think about it at all. Even in terms of negotiating, persuasion, influence, again, I mean, it's the whole topic of this podcast, but the bulk of real estate and the negotiations, the persuasion, all of these different aspects, they happen it's not between me and my clients. It's not between me and you. It's not between the listing agent and the seller of the house. All of these things happen between one agent and another agent. So it's, you know, 9 times out of 10, it's the buyer's agent and it's the listing agent. That's where the conversations are happening. That's where there's persuasion comes into play. That's where authority comes into play, and, you know, all these different aspects. So yeah, I think it's, you know, super important to have an agent that, you know, has a lot of authority.
Yeah, 100%. I thought of another example from the book that I read that just highlights the authority principle as well, and how we prefer to be at ease and not really spend much time thinking. Yeah. And it's between a doctor and a nurse. And at the hospital, the doctor typically has the most authority. they're dressed the part, they talk the part,
Yeah.
they've done the schooling to have earned that authority. And this is essentially why the principle works. This is why a lot of the principles that I'm going to talk about work, is because they are legitimate. They are kind of shortcuts our brain takes to think, okay, this is a trustworthy person. This is okay for me to follow their lead. And the issue is that sometimes the shortcut leads you to the wrong destination. And this is an example of it, where a doctor had left a note for the nurse to use these eardrops. And what they wrote on the note was, place in R, capital R, ear. And so that
Place
was
it in
meant
the right
to,
ear?
Yeah, it was meant to be in the right ear.
Okay, got it.
But the nurse kind of was on autopilot, thinking, okay, I just take orders from the doctor all the time. And they read it as place in rear.
Oh,
and
my
so
goodness.
they ended up placing it in rear.
Oh, my
and,
God.
And it was a big enough story that, they included it in the book. And it was a perfect example of you're so accustomed to, okay, he's the authority figure, I'm just going to follow exactly what he says.
Yeah.
A quick glance. I'm not going to calculate and second guess what he has on the paper.
Yeah.
It does say REAR.
Yeah.
And so I'll do that.
Yeah, bang,
and
right there. Decision made in 2 seconds, right?
100%. Yeah.
Crazy.
And so that can often happen. And they were saying essentially, like, you might think you have two brains working, but because one brain is so used to relying on the authority figure, you almost just have one person.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the authority, how do you think other people could capitalize on this? Like, let's say they're in their job, they're involved in sales, or they're involved in anything where they want to get their idea across, and they're having difficulty. How could they implement the authority principle into their life and into their role at work?
Yeah, I mean, can you give me an example of a workplace, maybe, just to give me some, motivation, or not motivation, but some inspiration here to touch on it? I mean, I'm trying to think of an example of, what kind of employee needs some authority other than a doctor, right?
Yeah, well, I feel like there might be a lot of it is very subtle. Like, even like you're well spoken, like and confident speaking, and that, I think, demonstrates authority, versus if you were to walk up to your real estate agent and they don't seem super confident. Right. You doubt that they're an authority figure. Yep. And then within minutes of speaking to them, you might not even consider them an authority. You're like, I don't know. You're starting to second guess the things they say because their presentation. So it could be as simple as that, as maybe what you wear even.
Yeah, 100%.
If I roll up to my doctor and he's wearing sweatpants with stains on it and stuff, I'm all of a sudden second guessing the advice. He says, take 2 doses of this. And I say, maybe I'm going to go to I'll get a second opinion. So
for sure.
That all contributes to authority on a subject.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that contribute to authority, right? Even on social media, I see some of the top agents that are, going to listing presentations or speaking at a big seminar. They're wearing jeans and sneakers, Yeah. I don't want to say brought up, but, I was taught that, if you're in a business, if you're in a, sorry, I've lost my word here, but if you're in a business situation, if you're in a professional setting, you wear nice clothes, you wear dress shoes, you make sure your pants and your shirt are ironed, and you comb your hair, and you present yourself well, right? I do think those things are all really important, but there's a long list of things that are important, right? It's not just the way you look, it's the way you sound, it's the way you speak. The other thing is it's the way you listen, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's super important to ask a lot of questions, and quickly coming back to, that guy that I met on the car dealership, right? I was getting him to talk, as opposed to me talking and telling him about the leather seats and the sunroof. Like, I wanted to get some information from him so I can kind of find out where I'm going with this, right? So I think that's really important, is to maybe just talk a little bit less and listen to your clients and hear what they have to say. So, I think you'll send a better message if, you speak less and listen more, right? You got to ask the right questions. You still have to carry yourself well. Yeah. But I think speaking with confidence, and not speaking about anything you're not, totally comfortable with speaking about. If you don't know the answer to something, don't make something up, right? Like, I'm fairly new in real estate. I have a pretty good idea of, all about homes, and, it's the family business. So it feels like I've been in it a lot longer than 2 years. But, for a quick little story here, I had an open house like really early in my real estate career. And I was just looking to stay busy on a Sunday, and I was asking some other agents if I can like host an open house on their behalf. This one guy gets back to me. He's like, hey, I have a listing out in Greeley. If you want to host an open house, no problem. Sunday 2 to 4, let me know. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Send me the address. I'd be happy to host an open house. He sends me the listing. It was like a $4 million house with like 8 bedrooms, and it had like 6 hot water tanks and like 4 acres of land. And it was a crazy house. The house was way out of my league. Like, I didn't know anything about this house. Like the systems in this house were on another level. And I remember kind of hyping myself up for the open house. And I'm like, you know what? If someone comes to this open house, they're likely somewhat in the ballpark of being able to afford a $4 million house. Like, these are going to be some, big money movers. Yeah. And so this nice couple walks in, and, they're touring the house, and they come back up and they start asking me all these questions. And one was about this. So I guess the house was on like a well, and they had this water purification system with like reverse osmosis and like these crazy systems, which now actually aren't that complicated. I understand what they are, but I had no idea what I was talking about. And I straight up told him, I'm like, listen, you know what? I don't know anything about it. If you, give me a day or two, I'd be happy to figure it out. The listing agent is a colleague of mine, and I'm sure he knows, and I'd be happy to, send some information for you. And they really appreciated that. Unfortunately, never ended up selling them a house, $4 million budget. It's not, it wasn't a surprise that they either had an agent or, they were looking for an agent that, deals commonly with multi-million-dollar homes, right? Yeah. But it just goes to show you, if you don't know the answer to something, don't make it up. Don't come up with something on the spot, because you're gonna end up making yourself, not sound very intelligent, and you're gonna take a hack at your authority, right? You're trying to maintain authority. You'll have better authoritative image if you admit that you don't know, rather than making something up, right? So
because it only takes one. I mean, you try to jump in and on something you're not an authority on. They recognize maybe the guy you're talking to is a reverse osmosis water filtration expert.
He could just be testing you.
Okay, what the hell? Like, that's not true.
Yeah.
You made another good point earlier about just trying to be pleasant, and that was the example you had when you were at the pleasant and personable when you were selling the car on the first week, and also just listening. And I feel like that's a big aspect of it. Another principle that's in the book is just likability. Yeah. So, aside from just being personable, like, are there certain things that you try to do to be likable, or you just try to be your authentic, natural self and try your best to be friendly?
Yeah, I definitely just try and be a friendly guy all around. Yeah. Again, though, I do think it comes down to having some emotional intelligence and realizing, essentially what your client wants to hear, right? And, I did mention how important it is to listen. But, there is certain types of clients that want to hear you speak. They want to hear what you have to say, right? So, yeah, I mean, being personable and being likable is hugely important, right? But it's dependent on who your client is and who you want to portray yourself in the moment, right? So, for these clients in that multi-million-dollar home, I was wearing a suit that day, shirt and tie, tucked in, like looking sharp as I could. And I was speaking as professionally as I could, but, I could only go so far with it, right? A first-time home buyer, for example, they have a million questions. They don't know where to start. And, the way I look at it is I just try and remind them, I saying, we're in this together. We're going to make it as stress-free and as easy as possible. And you know what? A lot of agents will say that. We'll make it as easy as possible and as stress-free, of course. But, making sure they know I'm always available, like, you really got to connect with them. You got to be a likable guy, right? Yeah. And different agents will, try and make themselves likable in other ways, whether it be, flooding them with gifts or I don't know, some other examples. But to me, it's being a personable guy, making sure I'm always available to answer their questions, and reminding them that I would never pressure them to buy something that, I either don't think is right for them or that they don't think is right for them.
Do you do your best to kind of find out a little bit about who they are, almost beyond their interests related to the house? So what I mean by that is, like, you find out maybe where they're from, where they've lived in the past, like what kind of hobbies even, because when I was reading the book about influence, what they said about likability is we like people that are similar, and we like people that are willing to listen to us. Yeah. And so if you can identify some similarities between people, you you add that to the connection, it makes them feel a lot more at ease.
Yeah, totally.
They're thinking more intuitively and less critical of you.
Yeah.
And then your odds of being influential increase.
Yeah, definitely. That's a huge point. And for all you listeners, I don't want to make it sound like I'm trying to, find a common ground with everyone I meet. But at the same time, I'm doing it with the intention to build some rapport, find some things in common so that they like me. But I'd also like to find some things in common so I like them, right? So, have some things to talk about other than business. We can, discuss their hobbies or travel or whatever they're doing. So I think it goes both ways, to be honest. You want to, you want your clients to like you because it, impacts on, your reputation and, how personable you are. But at the same time, I want to like my clients too. I want to know what they're up to. And it's definitely something I do is, try and find a common ground. And, when you work with friends, it's pretty natural and it can be pretty fun. But new clients, I mean, you gotta be on the ball. You gotta find some sort of common ground at some point, right? So it can be difficult at times to, find a common ground with, maybe an older person or, maybe someone who's new to Canada or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's hugely important. You gotta find something quick.
Yeah. Major factor. And the studies are showing that like if you are selling to your friend, your odds of selling go up dramatically, and they attribute this to just liking. I mean, you obviously like your friend way more than some random person selling. And this is, again, one of those principles within our psychology of human nature that occasionally it can not lead us to the best destination. And one example of that is when you really like somebody, maybe it's a celebrity or a famous athlete. Let's take Connor McDavid. You're just a massive fan, and he would have way better odds of selling something to you because you're a big fan of his than somebody else. So you may go to the store and he's plastered his name McDavid on a product, and that influences you because of this liking, this positive association. You associate that hockey stick with McDavid, you like it, and you're going to be more likely to buy it. And the thing is, unless you go into the more slow, deliberate, calculating and assess the hockey stick for what it actually is, you could potentially buy a stick that's actually not that good. You just liked it because it's associated with a guy you like.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that is something to consider when you're purchasing something. Is like, okay, I really feel like I like this person who's selling me this, or I really feel like I like that product.
Yeah.
But let me take a quick step back and say, is the product legitimately the thing I want?
Yeah.
But I think liking, authority, those are two big ones. Another one is scarcity.
Yeah.
Basically, if there's less of it, it's more appealing. How do you think that plays into some of your experiences with sales?
Yeah, I mean, I'll stick to real estate. Usually when there's scarcity, it's for two reasons. The market is either really hot and everything's getting sold, or it's really down and people just aren't listing their houses for sale. And both of those timings, both of those situations, can be good and bad, right? So, when the market's down and there isn't a lot of options, there's some scarcity, and there's often one house that's really, let's say there's a client that's looking in a specific neighborhood, in a hot market, there's 5 houses that are for sale and they're all going to sell. In a down market, there's one for sale, and everyone is just going toward that one house, and there's a lot of competition, right? So I think, scarcity just naturally, makes people want to buy it.
Do you ever try to amplify the scarcity, or at least like highlight it deliberately, because it's a persuasive factor? You say, you really reinforce the idea that these corner lots don't come up that often, or right now it's difficult to find houses. This one's available. I got another guy who's calling me about it. Yeah. You have a scarce amount of time, and the resource itself is scarce.
I don't, not directly. And there's kind of two ways. So if I have a seller who wants to sell their home, I might amplify that there's scarcity and it's a great time because there's such little inventory. There's not a lot of competition, and that's a really good thing. To a buyer, I don't think I'd really promote the idea that, there's only one house for sale, like they might kind of take that as, you should buy it right now, put some pressure on there. And that's really not how I conduct business, especially in real estate.
For sure.
Maybe a little bit in the car business, you'd say, hey, this is the last truck on the lot or something. And, they would understand that. But when it comes to real estate, those are huge transactions
Right.
that are like heavily emotionally dependent. And I could never like urge or pressure a client to, buy a house because, it's the last one, or, it's the only one that's going to come for sale this year.
Yeah.
But vice versa, if I have a seller and, they're wondering about selling their home, hey, there's not a lot of houses on the sale. You got a corner lot. It's a great time to sell. That's not fabricated. That's the truth.
Legit.
That's the truth, right?
It really is scarce.
And I guess it could be the truth to the buyer as well. But at the same time, it seems like it's coming from a place of persuasion, I guess you could say, or even, a little bit of pressure, right? So
yeah, if it's subtle, it's appropriate. But if you're just like dumping pressure on them, or they start to feel the pressure, then I guess that could backfire on you. Because like an example I was reading is this guy was trying to sell his car, and he had 3 interested buyers. And what he does is he invites them all to his house, and he says, "Come to my house at 2 p.m."
I think I saw that video.
And this amplifies the scarcity, because there's one car, there's 3 guys standing there. The first guy's taking a look at the car, and meanwhile the other 2 are standing there like, "Oh, I hope he doesn't take it."
Yeah.
And so because of the scarcity, all 3 of them probably found this car a lot more desirable than it really is.
Yeah, definitely.
And so you can do that, but then probably all 3 of them in reflection walked away from that being like, I don't really like the way that guy did that. Like he kind of brought us all there, amplified the pressure. I don't know if I'll buy something from him again. It may have worked for the one-time sale because we felt the pressure, but yeah, long term, it's not as good. And I feel like with all these principles, if you try to force it, it's not as good in the long term.
Yeah, I think in any sales avenue, there's really no need for pressure. Like you're not gonna succeed in sales very well, at least if you're a very forward, pushy, pressuring guy or girl, I should say. It's not a good way to conduct business. And I don't think people, you might get lucky a few times and you're going to convince someone that, they should buy this car right now because it's the last one, or buy this house because it's the only one that's going to come available on the street for the next 12 months. You might get lucky once or twice, but I don't think it's a good long-term way to grow your business or to, develop good relationships.
Have you seen some salesmen that encourage the pushy method? Like I think, I don't know if it was from you or someone else, but they were basically saying that in car sales in particular, sometimes you're encouraged to be extremely pushy.
Oh yeah.
Is that, have you seen that? And how do you think it really plays out? Like, have you seen colleagues of yours that you're like, whoa, like you're putting it on way too hard?
Yeah. So, I mean, not just colleagues, but so in a car dealership, the way it works is you have a salesman like I was, and then you have sales managers. I'm working face to face with the client. They're talking to me about, the car they want to buy and the payments and the price of it and whatnot. And then, I mean, you've bought a car before. I'm sure maybe you've been in this exact same situation where the salesperson usually says like, "I'll be right back. I'm going to go speak to my sales manager."
Classic.
So you go over and speak to the sales manager, and he essentially tries. And you know what? If there's any of my sales managers that end up listening to this podcast, I want them to know that I had some really great sales managers, despite all the stigmas in the car business.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm not afraid to say that I also had some really bad ones.
Right.
Not professional, not sharp, not dressed well, didn't carry themselves well, very pushy. So I will absolutely not name names, but I remember going to the manager's desk one time and asking this manager, he was the only one on duty, I guess I could say. So I had to go to him to like get some numbers, right? And it was a older lady and she wanted to buy a car, and he essentially gave me a paper and said like, go offer her this. And it was like the full price for the car. And she was also trading in her car. I know quite a bit about cars, just naturally, always kind of had an interest for cars. And she had a car that she was trading in. And so part of going to the sales manager's desk was price on the new one and a trade-in value on the trade-in. He gave her like $3,000 or something for her trade-in. And I knew really well that her car was worth like at least 12 grand.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, hey man, like, I don't really think this is fair. She might not know like how much her car is worth. Like, this isn't a fair number, And he's like, no man, just go. Like, it's a starting point, like just give it a shot.
Yeah.
And he was a pretty, not intimidating, but like he was a pretty serious guy. And unfortunately he was my superior. So I kind of had to listen to him at some point. Luckily, he didn't come back over with the person that I was dealing with, like the client of mine. So I went over and I straight up told her, I'm like, listen, this is a starting point and I know for a fact that we can get you way more for your trade.
Right.
And I unfortunately just had to make something up on the spot. Like, this was an auto-generated number from our online system, blah, blah, blah. I think we can get you way more for your car, but, this is a starting point. Anyways, this sales manager was like super, I hate to use the word sleazy, but he was sleazy. Like, he was trying to get every dollar from everyone and, rinse as many people as he can. And
I feel like it's a lot easier to be sleazy too when you're not the one who's going to go talk to the customer. Like, he basically he gives you a sleazy approach and says, take it, run with it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a lot harder than being the one who actually has to like do it to the customer.
Yeah. If you know what, I got to tell this story, and I haven't named any names, so I'm not too worried about exposing anyone, but I had this situation once where I was selling, this Ford dealership had some really expensive trucks, right? They had it was a Super Duty F-250 or something like that. And it was like $100,000, like really expensive truck.
Yeah.
And I'd built some really great rapport with this guy. He was like a farm owner, and actually carried himself really well. Like, he was super professional. He was a farmer, but like very professional, very polite.
Yeah.
And we had built some rapport. I showed him some trucks. We had gotten to the desk. We were ready to do some business. And I guess I went over to this same guy who was probably the only sales manager on duty, and he's like, I want to come over and meet this guy.
Right.
I was like, all right, come say hello. And I already knew, I'm like, he's not polished. I don't really want him to meet this client of mine. He comes over, and the first thing he says is like, what's up, buddy?
Yeah.
And he calls this guy buddy, and he wasn't even that old. He was probably I won't go to age, but he wasn't that old. This client of mine was definitely way older than him. And he just runs over and calls him buddy. And I'm like, this is a professional guy, dropping, $115,000 here. Can you not refer to him as buddy? And I obviously didn't say that in the moment, but later on, I called him out big time. And I'm like, can you not speak to my clients like that? You're really creating a bad image for myself, and this business, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, I think I'm off topic a bit, but yeah, I mean.
No, that is an interesting story though. Yeah. Especially, it seems so subtle. It's one word. But yeah, you call somebody buddy, especially your elder, it's a bit demeaning. It's like you just
crazy
scratch their head. What's up, buddy?
Yeah,
and he's just okay. You're just trying to
totally threw me off.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean that is the scarcity principle, and so we got authority, we got scarcity.
Yep.
Another one is reciprocation, and I feel like this one, it's a little bit more intuitive. I think. I mean, you like people that are going to reciprocate, right? You give somebody something and you somewhat want something in return. It's how society is cohesive, and how it works together is you don't just give somebody something and then they run away. For society to work well collaboratively, you need the reciprocation. Have you used or thought of reciprocation to be something you could use for influence and persuasion before? Or?
You know what? I've thought about it actually, because it's a tactic that a lot of people, I shouldn't say a tactic. It's a technique. It's a way that a lot of people do in business is, reciprocation, deal with me and, I'll give you cash back, or, if you buy with me, I'll give you this. I don't really like doing that, to be honest. I don't want to buy my business. So I think maybe it's successful for some people. But I think there's maybe other ways of doing it in a less pushy way, I guess you could say. For example, when I was in the car business, there was a referral thing. If you bring us a client, we'll give you $250.
Right.
So I guess that was kind of a way of maybe reciprocating. If they, brought me a referral, they'd get a $250 check, I guess. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, I like getting my clients gifts around the holidays and, doing some nice things for them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't really expect it back, Yeah. I think from a referral standpoint, let's say, I don't want people to refer me business because I got them a Christmas gift, or if, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one, because you don't want to use it in a manipulative way, but you also want to try to be a good guy. And
I also love being generous too. I love getting things people, but
so you want to give things to them, but you don't want to have them feel like it's a strings attached gift where it's okay, I give you a gift, now you got to buy a house through me.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing is, because reciprocation is such an embedded thing in our human nature, nobody wants to be the guy who doesn't return the favor. You don't want to be thought of as the that type of person who just doesn't give back.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so deeply embedded in our human nature that even if it doesn't make sense, like, okay, Mike gave me a gift, I don't need to feel like I need to buy a house through him.
Yeah.
You might still feel a little bit like, okay, there's a unconscious score here, and Mike's done a lot for me. I should probably do something for him.
Yeah.
And the example that they gave in the book with this is there was this guy, Joe. He was trying to go around selling tickets to people.
Okay.
And what he would do is he would buy a drink of his choice, and he would show up to them and say, hey, I got you a drink. And then shortly after that, he would try to sell them these tickets. And what it turned out is that when Joe gave people the drink, his sales were significantly higher than when Joe didn't give them anything. And it's an interesting example because that person may not have even wanted the drink. Maybe they don't even like that flavor, but it was still highly effective. They just had a pressure now. Like, okay, the guy's like, he got me a drink. Like, all right, you're selling this.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I'll buy a few tickets. And so that's how reciprocity can be used to be persuasive and influential. But I feel like this one out of all of them feels the most gross to capitalize on as persuasion.
Yeah.
But it is so deeply embedded in us. And I think sometimes we actually might not even want to accept a gift because we don't want to have to feel that burden of having to give something back.
Yeah.
And a classic example of that would be like a girl at a bar may reject having someone buy her a drink, even if she wants a drink, just because she doesn't want to have this strings attached or feel like, okay, what
now
are you
I got to talk to this
expecting?
guy for the next 20 minutes, you know?
Yeah, like what are you expecting in return? I'll just reject the gift outright, and that way I don't have to feel that burden of the reciprocity.
Yeah.
Have you?
So that's a fair point. That makes total sense. But I also think that it doesn't necessarily have to be a gift, right? Or even like a beer or a drink. It doesn't need to be anything really that special. And something that just came to mind, and I guess I've been doing it without even realizing that I'm doing it. But one thing I offer is free market analysis on a home or a free appraisal, where I'll literally come to your house. I'll do up a comparative market analysis on the neighborhood and your home and, the comparable sales that have recently happened. And I'll tour your home and tell you what I think it's worth, or if you wanted to put it on the market in a couple months, what I think it would be worth. And I do that all for free, right? So maybe that's in some way, shape, or form. That's kind of a way that, maybe I tie into that a little bit. And of course, I think every agent would agree that, like, if you're invited into someone's home to give them a free market analysis and give them an appraisal on your house, you hope that they call you when the time is right to sell their home. They don't have to by any means. Again, you have the opportunity to make an impression, maybe influence them a little bit, show them how personable you are. So it is a good touch point. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't say that, I necessarily expect a call just because I gave them a free appraisal, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like if it's a competitive market too, you do what you can to offer a bit more than the other real estate agents. If you're offering that for free, it's just the name of the game. And I think a lot of these principles of persuasion, it's just like people are going to use them, and it doesn't have to be an outright negative thing. Everyone's trying to make a living, everyone's trying to make sales. And so if you're in the business and it's a very competitive business, you want to put food on the table, and if there's certain tips and tricks and things you can do to make sales, then you're going to take them, but just try to use it in as ethical of a way as possible, because in the long term you will probably get caught if you're screwing people over.
Exactly. I actually want to maybe put you on the spot a little bit right now, if you don't mind. Do you ever think you've been super persuasive to anyone, or have you ever tried to like persuade someone into either doing something or buying something? Have you ever had any situation where you thought like, I actually kind of talked that guy into it, or, did something persuasive?
Yeah, probably. Probably like all the time. I not like
all the time.
Well, just there probably is a lot of examples. Actually, one that comes to mind immediately is when I was selling stuff at a garage sale, the Great Glebe garage sale.
Sweet.
And I think I used a bit of the scarcity principle unknowingly at the time. Like I hadn't really read up on it, but basically let the guy know that there's a couple other guys that were interested in this. And one guy, he did tell me he was going to come back an hour later.
Yeah.
He just needed to go get a bit more money, and then he's going to come back and get it.
Okay.
he was willing to buy it for $10 less than my offer price though.
Okay.
And so if you're willing to pay full price, you've got it. Just to let you know, 1 hour from now, someone's going to come and take it.
Right.
So you put a little bit of the scarcity in, and it's legitimate. Some guy did tell me he was going to come back and get it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that'd be an example where I've used it. Let me think of some of the other ones. I mean, the authority one, probably just not as directly. You just try your best to speak confidently and be well spoken, dress the part, act the part.
Honestly, being well spoken and just like carrying yourself well, leveling with the person that's on the other side of the transaction is huge. Like, it carries so much weight, right? And I do want to keep this conversation going about, you know, if you've had any experiences where you're like, wow, I've been really influential, or I've really persuaded that person. And I'll give you a quick story of one time that it wasn't too long ago. So I bought a new hockey stick. It's funny. It's the second time we've talked about hockey sticks.
David.
But I bought a new hockey stick, and I went into the store, and I just play like men's league, you know, nothing competitive, right? But at the same time, I want like a high quality stick, right? I want to shoot some snipes, right? So I go into the store, and the sticker price on this stick is like $400, and it's on sale for like $200, 50% off. Pretty good, right?
Yeah.
I still don't want to spend $200 on a stick, not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
So I go into the store, and I won't name names again, but this sales guy was, you know, a young guy, a little bit unprofessional, but like, what do you expect? Just like a basic hockey store, right? Anyways, I decided to just like give it a shot. And you know what? I think I do this a lot in a retail space, at least if I feel comfortable and I think it's appropriate. But I started building rapport with this guy, and I just like maybe asked about where he played hockey and how long he's been working there and what he thought about this stick. And I think I was honestly just curious and wanting to have a conversation with him. But eventually I said, like, can you do any better on this price? You know, like, I realize it's 50% off. I really want this stick, but I just play men's league. You know, I don't need a $400 stick, but, you know, I do want it, but I don't need it.
Yeah.
And anyways, because we had built so much rapport, like 5 minutes prior to that, he goes on to talk about where the store got these sticks, and he actually told me how much they paid for them. He told me their cost on the sticks.
Wow.
He's like, oh, we got them from some pro team that like didn't like the color or something.
Yeah.
And we got them wholesale, and he's like, they cost this much. And I'm like, wow, like that's a sweet deal. And he's like, yeah, he's like, all the employees bought one at cost because like it was such a good deal. I'm like, could you maybe just like buy one, and then I'll like meet you up later, and I'll, you know, give you $20 more than your cost? And he's like, no, man, there's no way I could do that. Like that wouldn't be ethical or whatever. I don't think he used the word ethical, but he's like, no, man, I can't do that. I'm like, okay, no worries. I was kind of half kidding anyways.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, well, like, I don't know if there's like a manager or something. Like, do you mind if you can just see if you can, you know, maybe knock off, you know, another 10% or something off this stick? So he's like, yeah, let me see what I can do. And I think it was the last left-handed stick. And I'm like, it's your last one, you know, like, I just want to take this one off your hands, you know?
Right. Yeah.
He goes back to his manager, and he comes back a few minutes later. He's like, listen, man, he's like, we're just going to give it to you at cost. And I'm like, sweet, man.
Wow.
So I got this like $400 stick. I ended up getting like 80% off. And I think the whole reason was just because I like built some rapport with the guy, and I was just like, had a conversation, you know, kind of, you know, just gave him a little talk about what I'm looking for, and I don't really need an expensive stick, but I want it, you know. And then he started talking about the stick, and, you know, sure enough, he really hooked it up for me, right? So I think that is a form of persuasion, and you know what, it's I guess it could save you a couple bucks from time to time, right? So that was a good success story. But
and that's something that you might not think that you could negotiate the price on, right? Like, there's certain items where people consider, okay, like a car or a house, like I can negotiate the price. I'm at a garage sale. Yeah. But if I'm just buying a hockey stick at the local hockey store, Canadian Tire, whatever it may be, you don't assume that you can even influence the price at all. Yeah. But you, I guess, having experience in sales and just want to chat up with this guy, he starts to feel super comfortable, starts to just maybe spill things that he shouldn't necessarily reveal.
He probably didn't even mean to tell me his cost, but he ended up saying it. You know, we were shooting the shit, for lack of a better term, and he just said it, you know, and I was like, oh, okay, perfect. There's my entryway. You know what? My favorite line in sales is, you know, something that honestly I think about all the time, and most people, they can't come around to it, and, you know, it makes them uncomfortable. Maybe they're just, you know, they don't want to put someone else on the spot, but you don't get what you don't ask for.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
And
you'd be surprised.
And you're not going to ask in a demeaning way or a mean way. You know, like I was being so friendly. I wasn't like, hey man, you got to give me one at cost. Like why do you get one and I don't? Like, you're not going to get anywhere with that. I was like, sweet man. Like you got to stick at cost. That's great. You know, like any way you could hook me up with one of those, you know, and he was probably laughing and having a good time. And yeah, anyways, my favorite term is you don't get what you don't ask for. And I don't know. I mean, I use that a lot. I get out of my comfort zone and, you know, try and, you know, get things that I ask for. And, you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And that's all right. You know, if someone tells me no problem, you know, especially if they say no, you can't react in a bad way. Right. Yeah. You know, no problem. You know, just thought I'd ask. It's all good. Right. So
yeah, anyways, you don't
that's my favorite line.
Just kind of like a relaxed, open-ended, like any possibility of this.
Yeah. You know?
And then they say no. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But I do want to hear, I want to hear if you've, you know, ever had a situation like that where you think, you know, you've hustled, maybe for lack of a better term again, or, you know, maybe persuaded someone or had some influence on the spot. Anything come to mind? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think. I mean, I think there's definitely times where I've used, it's not one we've talked about. It's one that you've mentioned, which is the anchoring principle. Like your car salesman who asked you to tell that old lady that she's going to get 3,000.
Yeah.
Just like the principle of starting super extreme.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the conversation is kind of anchored around that number.
Yeah.
There's been moments where I'll just throw out, even if I feel like it's somewhat ridiculous number.
Yeah.
And at least that's the start of the conversation.
Yeah. A little baseline.
Yeah. So could you do $100? If the thing is actually worth 200, they might be, and you got to be careful with it. You don't want them to be like, you're insane. Like, I'm going to stop dealing with you immediately.
Exactly.
So it's got to be somewhat within reason. But yeah, I think I did that when I was buying these couches just over to the right.
Nice couch.
They have the market price. I think it was like, what was it? Maybe
you don't have to say it.
No, I don't really care what it was. Like, I think it was like 1,200. I don't know, something like that for two couches. Yeah. And I think I went in and requested 900.
Okay.
And so that might be pretty close to the bottom of whatever they're looking for. I went to another store as well.
Yeah.
And so I guess that was another thing I did. I went to two different stores, Leon's, and then there's another one called like the Couch Expert or whatever. I forget what it's called exactly.
Okay.
But yeah, you shop around a little bit and you let the salespeople know, okay, well, there's another place that's willing to do this.
Yeah.
If we can drop down to this price, I won't even check back in at the other store. I'll go for it. So I think there's another scarcity thing.
100%.
And then the anchoring of like, let's build the conversation around this 900 number rather than talk about the 1,200. I think I ended up paying closer to 1,000. So they brought me up slightly, said it's a little too low, but at least we started at a spot that was appealing to me. And I think that is, if it's a one instance sale, I think that is a good approach, is to be the one to set the anchor number. Yeah. It's a little different when you're going to deal with that person time and time and time again. Yeah. Because you can rub them the wrong way. But if they started the conversation and said, okay, 1,200 is where we're going to start, that would have shifted the whole negotiation. And I probably would end up paying slightly higher. Yeah. So yeah, that'd be another example. There's probably some others. I mean,
I actually have one. Actually, funny enough, of a time where you were very persuasive to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's actually a really great story. And it was actually exactly
you had that one.
I kind of want to.
Right?
Yeah, I did. No, I swear, I actually just thought about it. It actually came up on my Snapchat memories today, and you might get the hint pretty soon, but. It was actually pretty close to 7 years ago today. Okay. Where you were going on a trip with our buddy Chris. And I think it was probably, we'll call it a Saturday, where we were probably out at, one of our buddies' house. We were maybe having some beers, and you and Chris had told me you're going on a trip to Hawaii. Yeah. And you're leaving on, call it Thursday, like 4 or 5 days later. And I was like, maybe I'll come, that sounds like fun. And I think it was probably a combination of you and Chris, but you guys persuaded me into coming. Like, yeah, it's going to be a great time. You should totally come. We're going to do this and that, rent some mopeds, drive around the island. And you had me sold, man. So I think literally, again, it was a Saturday. And I think we left on like the Thursday or Friday. So pretty quick turnaround on you there. You just persuaded me really quick. And the next thing you know, 7 years ago today, we were on a beach in Hawaii together, man.
100%.
So,
Yeah, that was a wild trip. And the fact that you jumped on it so quickly was surprising, but it was sick that you did.
Yeah.
And to be fair, Hawaii is probably an easier thing to sell. I mean, you start to be like, no, it's going to be fucking
yeah, it doesn't sound good
weather.
at all.
Yeah. So it's, easy to buy that one. But,
so what I was going to say is, I don't actually think I'm that easily persuaded, but I will hear people out. I will hear what they have to say. And again, Hawaii is a pretty easy sell, not going to lie. So kudos to you, but could have been a tougher sell.
Yeah. And were you happy that you went for it?
100%. We had a great time. Don't you remember?
Yeah.
So we had a sweet time, but that was a time I was easily persuaded. Do you think you're easily persuaded? Do you think, you can be convinced of something pretty easily or at least even be influenced? Do you think you're influenced easily?
I don't think so. I think I can be, and sometimes I almost wish that I wasn't so skeptical, but I think I'm kind of just by nature, I can be somewhat skeptical. Like I'm doubtful that they're kind of building something up. I'm doubtful that it's legitimate, and I want to kind of check for myself. And sometimes I wish I could let that go a little bit, because I think that makes it harder for you to have just a genuine connection with the salesperson and allow the rapport to be built when you're kind of just on the back foot, like second guessing, you're thinking, I'm not sure about that. So I don't think so too much, but I, like anybody, I for sure can fall prey to any persuasion. Like the guy, like I said, the authority of the mechanic, especially on something I don't know much. I can't really look into my own memory or knowledge for what is right. I just, okay, sure.
Yeah, he said it. It's got to be right.
Got to be true. What about you? Do you think you're easily persuaded?
I think some things I am. I think I'm Hawaii, a little bit. I think I'm a little bit impulsive. Yeah, Hawaii. Got persuaded into that. 3 days notice, went to Hawaii, but I think I'm a little bit impulsive. So I don't think it's so much easily persuaded. I'm a little bit impulsive. But in terms of persuasion, I mean, it's got to be a pretty good deal for me to bite the bullet on something.
That impulsivity, I could definitely resonate with that, actually, because I think I can definitely be skeptical, but I can be impulsive in like a lazy way. Yeah. And I think this comes back to the whole idea of like, you have two systems of thinking. One is fast, at ease. One is slow, more deliberate and calculated. Yeah. But people don't like being in that slow, calculated mode, because it's people, as frank as it is, like people don't like thinking too hard. They'd rather just things to be easy. It happen. Yeah. And so I think I've definitely had moments where I just buy something because I'm lazy. I don't want to have to do all the research and think about it. Yeah. And you simply can't afford to do this for everything in your life. You'll just be exhausted. There's too many decisions that need to be made. Yeah. Sometimes you got to go out based on your gut instinct. Yeah. So 100%, there's moments where I'm like, I get tired of researching. I'm like, I'm just going to pull the trigger. Like,
just get it done. Buy it. Yeah. Sweet.
Yeah. Another one we can move on to is social proof. It's another big, I think this one actually might be one of the biggest principles of persuasion in the modern era, especially when you're online. Yes. How do you see social proof, whether it's in your roles at work or just in general online?
Yeah, I mean, social proof. I mean, one thing is reviews, obviously, which is actually something I'm trying to work on in my business model right now, is, to get those online reviews. The first thing people do when, they're buying something or they're dealing with someone in business is they're going to look his name up online and, see what he's all about, right? Yeah. I have a functioning website. Everything's great on the website. I haven't dialed in that much into getting my clients to leave me a review. And it can be a little bit of an uncomfortable request to be like, hey, can you leave me a review? Even if I know that, they were totally satisfied with my service and they're super happy, it's kind of weird to be like, can you leave me a review, right?
Yeah. I guess for anybody listening there, if you feel you found some value in what Mike has said throughout this podcast, you've gained some new knowledge, maybe reciprocate a bit, check out his website.
Shoot
Mike
me a review.
Real Estate.
Appreciate it, Ollie.
Give a 5-star review.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, so that's social proof, right? If if a new client of mine, or maybe someone I met at an open house, maybe they're not quite a client yet, but they met me and they're doing some research on me to see what I'm all about. Maybe they're looking for some reviews, see what other people think, see some social proof that people have dealt with this guy. They liked his services. They did a great job. I think it does carry some weight. That being said, I think that it's not everything, For example, I don't have a whole lot of testimonials or reviews on my business page. But I think that if someone looked me up that I had already met and had an interaction with, they're not going to be like, oh, he's got no reviews. There's no social proof. There's no chance we're going to deal with this guy, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important, but there's definitely other aspects of business where social proof is huge. Even going back to like social media influencers and whatnot, or the McDavid, if someone, is using a product or using a service and, millions of people are following these people and trust and believe them, that's some social proof that, either the product is good or the service is good. And yeah, I think it does carry a lot of weight. So
yeah. And I think it's one that makes it really hard for beginners or like people trying to enter an industry because you may not have the amount of testimonials, or in the case of trying to put videos out there on YouTube or any platform. What I've noticed is sometimes I'll literally just skip over the videos that have really low views, just like instinctually, just automatically. I'm like, oh, that must not be that good.
Yeah.
So I don't want to spend my time on it. It doesn't have the social proof, even though there's definitely a possibility that video with 10 views was good.
Yeah.
I just immediately, my mind goes, no, I'll stick to the ones that the majority of human beings like. And again, this is just such a human nature thing.
Yeah.
Most of the time makes sense to do what other people are doing.
Yeah.
But this can be skewed into a manipulative way. And a couple examples is like, let's say a bartender at the start of his shift, he has a little tip jar. He might throw a couple bills of his own in there, a couple coins, social proof.
Oldest
it looks like
people
are, or even same thing with the bar. They might kind of juice up the line outside of the bar.
Yep.
So it looks like, wow, all these people are going to this bar. It must be good.
Yeah.
And it works. People are not necessarily happy when they find out that you did it as a trick. You get it into the bar and it sucks.
Yeah.
But it's a legitimate thing and 100% online. The amount of comments, likes, and views, they give you that instinctual social proof. But as a beginner, it's tough to build a platform. But it's not everything. It's not the only way to be persuasive.
No,
and
definitely
so,
not.
like we've been talking about, there's a lot of other ways. What do your online platform, what are you trying to do with your real estate in terms of online? I mean, any business these days kind of has to be doing things online. Are you trying to play the social media game, like the influencer game? Like, how do you go about that?
Yeah. So you know what, when I first got into real estate, I remember thinking about the decision into transitioning into this career, never thought about, I'm going to have to get into social media, of course, like everyone's got Instagram and stuff, but I was never that active of a poster before, getting into real estate. And I'm still not the most active real estate agent that posts on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or any of these platforms. Mm-hmm. It is a 2026 goal of mine to be a little bit more active. You know what? I think it's just it's a good reminder to your own personal network that, you're in the business, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm up to. And I do think that there's some agents getting some really good results on just posting content, even, weekly basis, daily basis, monthly basis, whatever it may be. I've generated leads off Instagram, right? You follow up with an old coworker, an old friend, and, they saw you on Instagram and they're like, oh, that's Mike. He's in real estate. Sweet. We're looking to buy a house, and they, shoot you a DM, and it's great. But it is a challenge. It's not the easiest thing to do, to put yourself out there. And, if you got a new listing or something, you got to do a video in front of the house, and the guy's got the big camera in front of your face. It's tough to do. So kudos to all those agents that are putting a lot of content out there. It's not easy. So good for them.
And over time, you get them dialed in. Like, you seem to be getting it pretty dialed in. I saw one of yours lately where it's like basically a nice kind of capture the attention thing right off the bat.
Yeah.
And then let's check out the house.
Appreciate
give a tour.
that.
Good camera work too. I don't know what you use or who you use for that, but like steady camera stuff like that goes a long way.
Yeah. It's like I said, I mean, it's not the most comfortable thing to do, but you really got to do it, and it does pay off, right? So it's just a good way to keep in contact and stay top of mind, right? And so coming back, I really don't want to talk about selling cars that much, but when I was selling cars, they used to do promotional videos for me, kind of without me knowing, actually, funny enough. So I would randomly get these messages from, you know, people back in high school or even like family, friends or whatnot. And they'll be like, I just saw you come up in an ad on like YouTube, like out of nowhere, like a commercial. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't even know I was on this.
Didn't sign off on that.
I didn't sign off on me being on an ad campaign. But sure enough, you know, they did it on social media. They did like YouTube, Facebook ads. I was never on TV, I don't think. I hope not. But you know what? It paid off. And the reason I know it paid off is because I haven't been in the car business in, you know, close to 3 years. I still get calls regularly being like, hey, Mike, I'm thinking about buying a car. Can you help me out? Yeah. First of all, the answer is absolutely yes. If anyone needs any help buying a car, I'm more than happy to help. It is a passion of mine. I do keep up to date with the market and stuff like that. So I'm always willing to help someone buy a car. But yeah, so that was kind of a reminder to me that, you know, they were posting videos about me selling cars and advertising cars, and it kept me top of mind, and it reminded people that, you know, when they think about buying a car, they thought about me. So I have to keep reminding myself that I got to do that with real estate and just put myself out there and keep reminding people, hey, I'm in the business. This is what I'm doing. If you need any help, give me a shout. And so I think it'll continue to pay off. It's been great.
Yeah. And I think just like being out there, being online, being the thing that people see, it also plays into the fact that people don't, it's tedious to do all the research. It's tedious to go and try to figure everything out. So sometimes whatever's in front of you, you'll end up just going with that. Like the product you see first, the real estate agent you see first. Definitely. They're there. Yeah. Okay. Let's make it easy. I'll just go. Let's do it.
Yeah. And they'll probably do a little bit of due diligence. Yeah. You know, they'll make sure he speaks well. He carries himself well. He, you know, doing some business, and, you know, he carries himself well. And
it'll be, just like a quick, almost unconscious assessment. They watch a little 1-minute video of you. They're like, I see the authority, I see the likability. Yep. Probably not conscious. They're probably not like, no, okay, check, authority, check. They're just like, yeah, this guy seems legit. Yeah.
No, I think it happens all unconsciously. They're checking those boxes mentally without them even knowing. And hopefully that's what people are thinking when they see my videos. So keep an eye out for the next one.
100%.
Yeah.
I just thought of another interesting application of the reciprocity. It's a very subtle and small thing, but it's actually making a concession in a negotiation. It then makes the other person feel like, okay, he's giving me something. So let's say I am selling my shoes and I set the price for $100, and I know that's a little bit high. I anchor it kind of high. Okay. And they say, yeah, I don't know, that's a little bit high for me. And I say, well, you know what I could do for you is I could bring that down to 90. Mm-hmm. And so this feels like a reciprocal action. It's like, I've given you something. Yep. You don't have a product or anything yet. Mm-hmm. But it makes the other person feel like, okay, this is a reciprocal interaction. This person's willing to work with me, willing to give me something. And so, again, don't screw people over and like set an insane anchor and sell them like a horrible price. But keep this in mind. Everyone's trying to make a living, make the most amount of money they can on their products. Yeah. So, set a high anchor, and then have in mind that I'd be willing to give a concession. And this concession, you can build it up a little bit of well, for you, what I could do for you, and like as if you're giving something to them, and that could work. Like, have you consciously been aware of like that when you're talking prices on the lot, or even real estate a little bit?
In real estate, not really so much. No, to be honest, there isn't a whole lot about that, but I think it's a good example on like selling something on Marketplace or selling a pair of shoes, right? Yeah. You know, there's that idea definitely comes into play, and, you know, just reciprocating, you know, what the person on the other side of the transaction wants to hear. But I also think that we're more willing to reciprocate, again, if you're driving with the person, if he's built some rapport with you, he might be the buyer. Absolutely. And he's trying to build some rapport with you, just like I was the buyer for that hockey stick, you know? Yeah. He might be talking to me about whatever I'm selling and talking to me about how passionate he is about it. And maybe he really wants these pair of shoes and he's been looking all over for them. And he got to your feelings. And the next thing you know, you're like, yeah, man, I'll sell them to you for whatever you want. Just have them, you know? So in real estate, though, not so much, no, to be honest. But
yeah. Yeah, it goes a long way. There's one more that I want to ask you about is the consistency principle. Mm-hmm. So basically what it is that someone who you've got to make a commitment, they then feel like they want to kind of keep their word and be consistent with that. And again, everybody likes people that are consistent. You don't want someone who's wishy-washy, changing their mind. So it makes sense for this to be persuasive to people, but it can be skewed a little bit. And an example of that that I was reading about is they were going door to door asking these people to sign off whether they want the neighborhood to have safer driving. And so what it turned out is that the people who they went door to door and they signed off on the petition were more likely when these people came back and they came back and asked, can you put this sign on your front lawn that says drive carefully?
Yep.
And so the people that had previously, let's say it was the week before, signed the petition saying, yeah, I agree, we need to make this neighborhood safer.
Yeah.
They're significantly more likely to then be willing to put the sign on their lawn than the people who never signed off on anything.
Makes sense.
And so really even if those people think the sign's ugly, because they signed off, they consider, well, you know what? I said I care about the thing. Like I even signed it and I said I care about it. So now I feel like I'm going against my word if I don't put that sign on my lawn. So have you seen that principle at play at all? Like in your work or what do you think about that one in general?
Yeah. I mean, there's like contracts that, you know, clients have to sign with their agent that says like they're going to work with them.
Yeah.
So that kind of binds them to them. But, you know, oftentimes, especially if it's a friend or, you know, someone I've worked with before, we're not getting into contracts. You know that they're going to do business with you. You don't need to sign them up on some formal contract, right? So again, you know, not really so much. I mean, commitment level, you know, again, maybe to a seller of a home, you know, if you met with someone or, you know, you gave them that appraisal or you went and did a market analysis on their home, I wouldn't get them to sign being like, so if you do ever decide to sell, you'll call me, right? Like sign here. Right. Definitely not. You know, I think that expectation is there maybe a little bit. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not really sure where I was going with the question, but
yeah, well, I think that one is a little less likely to have obvious examples in the field. But one unique thing about the consistency principle for persuasion is that you could actually use it on yourself intentionally.
Yeah.
Let's say you want to build a habit, you want to quit smoking.
Yep.
What the studies show is the bigger of the commitment pressure you put, the more likely you are to follow through. So if I verbally tell you like, Mike, I'm done smoking, I'm going to quit.
Yeah.
That is good. And that might make me more likely to quit. Yep. Even better would be if I wrote you a letter.
Yeah.
And I send that letter to you.
Yeah.
Even better would be if I broadcast this on social media and I tell everybody I know I'm quitting smoking.
Yes.
Like everybody.
Yeah.
And so
hold me accountable. I'm doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so because you feel like bad and you don't feel nice when you've gone back on your word.
Yep.
You could actually use this on yourself. Try to persuade yourself.
100%.
Any habit you want.
Yeah.
Just tell everybody and then you have to commit.
Yeah. So as I was saying, one of my 2026 goals is to be a little bit more active on social media. And I actually thought of this idea. I'm like, I think my first video is going to be like, not calling myself out, but saying like, in 2026, my goal is to post every Friday, you know, something about real estate, you know,
right.
And then post that. People are going to be like, all right, see you Friday, you know?
Yeah.
And then, you know, someone might like comment or like it and I'd be like, I'll see you next Friday. And then I'm stuck, you know, then I have to. So again, it's holding yourself accountable and setting yourself up for, I guess, a good habit in that scenario. But yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, see yourself every Friday. I'll have to keep an eye on that, call you out. If bud, you missed the Friday.
Haven't announced the video yet. So give me a couple weeks in 2026. But we'll see. Definitely. Yeah. The goal is not necessarily, I was using that as an example every Friday, but
No.
Ollie's expecting videos on Friday now. Okay, get to work, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So what else? Like, I think we can start to wrap things up. Like, where can people find you if they've listened to this and they happen to be also wanted to buy a house? Like, where can they find you, Mike Assad Real Estate?
Well, appreciate the avenue, Ollie. And just for everyone, I actually didn't set him up with that. He just decided to do that. Mike Assad, Royal LePage Team Realty. You can check me out on socials. You should be able to find me if you just Google my name, Mike Assad, on Instagram, same as well. So interested in buying, selling, investing, whatever it may be. Maybe you just want to have a discussion about real estate and talk about your goals or anything you want to achieve. Be happy to help you out. So yeah, that's about it. You did say we do have a few more minutes though. The last thing I want to talk about is how in real estate, I think we mentioned a few times that there's more influence than there is persuasion.
Yeah.
But there is some persuasion that happens in real estate, and I do want to give a couple examples because it can happen. And maybe for a listener, they're gonna take a little bit from this. So here's an example of where sometimes I need to persuade my clients. And again, it's not persuasion like the car business, or it's not persuasion like trying to get a deal on a hockey stick. But here's the situation. Let's say I have a buyer. Let's use you, Ollie. You're trying to buy a house.
Yeah.
And let's say we've seen lots of houses. We've worked together for a while, and this house comes up. It's a 3-bedroom house, whatever. Let's say it's 500. It's listed for 500,000. That'd be a sweet deal in the city of Ottawa right now.
100%.
Let's say it's 500,000.
Yeah.
And you say, Mike, I want to make an offer. That's great. I'm speaking to the listing agent, trying to get some things, get some information on how to create the best offer. And I find out that there's going to be another offer coming to the table. Mm-hmm. So what I have to explain to you as my buyer, I have to persuade you and give you the idea that, listen, you're not going to be the only offer that's presented to these sellers. The seller is going to pick one.
Yeah.
So what I don't want to happen, and sorry, we'll rewind a little bit. Let's say there wasn't multiple offers and the house was listed at 500,000 and you say, I want to make an offer on the house. And you say, Mike, what should I offer? And we do some comparables, we do some research, and I say, a good offer would be 485.
Yeah.
And you say, great, I'm down. Let's make an offer at 485. So you're willing and able to pay 485. Different scenario, same house, same situation, but there's a second offer coming to the table that we know about. And in real estate, it's blind bidding, right? So you have no idea what that offer is going to be. It might be less than 485, it might be more than 485, but right now, I know you're willing to pay 485 at least because we've had that discussion. But what I have to persuade you is that, Ollie, let's say that other offer, we find out in 1 week that they paid 487.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to be upset? The worst thing an agent can hear is, oh, well, I wish I would have known. I would have paid 487. Well, okay. So in those situations, what I have to persuade my clients is, and it's a little bit of a touchy subject because I don't want to come off as pushy. But at the same time, I have to have these conversations that say, in a multiple offer situation, you need to put your best foot forward that you possibly can. So that even if you find out next week that it sold for $1,000 more, you're totally okay. You're not upset. I put my best foot forward. I tried my best. So that's a situation that, I've, experienced. And, sometimes you're like, man, I'm feeling very persuasive, but it's information that I need to share with my clients, and I need to, essentially explain that situation. And, it's at the end of the day, it's looking out for the best interest of my clients and making sure that, I'm doing what's best for you. I'm laying out the rules here and how this works and, putting you in the best position. So, that's really important. That's a persuasive part of real estate is you've got to persuade them to multiple offer situation, got to put your best foot forward that you possibly can.
For sure. And I feel like a lot of these persuasion examples is literally you just giving them the information too. It's like, just so you know, there's 3 other people. You're not trying to be like, highlight, this is such a scarce resource. Like you got to feel the pressure. It's just like, it is what it is. There's 3 other people buying. Take that into account. If you really love it, well, put in your best foot forward. Or I guess if you're willing to be patient and wait, then do what you can. But yeah, I think, again, another great example, and we can start to wrap it up, man. But I appreciate you joining, and for everybody listening, check out Mike Assad Real Estate.
Check out Ollie Lewis podcasts, and support your boys, and we'll get some things done.
Support your boys. All right, cheers, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.